an Amish teenager, a hidden smartphone, and a community that has held the line against technology for 300 years. This is not a story about rebellion. It is a story about what happens when the most powerful communication device ever built fits silently inside a coat pocket. The Ordnung. The Ordnung is the governing code of Amish life. It is unwritten, community-specific, and enforced not through law, but through social pressure and spiritual authority. It does not mention smartphones by name. It does not mention Instagram or TikTok. What it forbids is pride, worldly connection, and anything that pulls an individual away from community and toward the self. Church leaders apply that principle to internet-connected devices. The rule exists, and it is real. It was simply never written down. How they buy it. Amish teenagers during Rumspringa, the period of exploration beginning at age 16, frequently hold outside jobs that pay entirely in cash. That cash requires no parental approval to spend and no community oversight. A prepaid smartphone purchased at a Walmart or convenience store requires no contract, no ID verification beyond the payment itself, and leaves no record tied to a name. Former Amish Stephen Stoltzfus of Birdsboro confirmed that buying burner phones and prepaid smartphones was standard practice among his peers during Rumspringa. The purchase is completely invisible to the community. The phone, once inside the household, eventually is not. Where they hide it. The smartphone's greatest threat to Amish authority is its size. It is smaller than a Bible. It disappears into a coat lining, beneath floorboards in the barn, inside a hay bale, or at the bottom of a work bag carried through the house every morning. Community members and researchers have both noted that smartphones crept into Amish settlements largely under the radar precisely because they are so easily concealed on a person. A phone shanty could be monitored by neighbors. A communal telephone had witnesses. A device that fits in one palm and charges from a hidden source is a fundamentally different kind of problem. The internet browsing. For a teenager whose formal education ended at 8th grade, who has never owned a television, never watched a film, and never scrolled through a social media feed, the internet does not come as a shock. It arrives as something far more dangerous. It feels immediately familiar. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, the platforms are engineered to be intuitive for any person who picks them up. In 2019, a 14-year-old Amish girl from Lancaster County posted a TikTok video introducing herself to the world. Within weeks, it received over 430,000 views and nearly 22,000 likes. She was wearing traditional Amish clothing throughout. She was not hiding. The outside world had found her, and she had found it back. Group punishment. Amish teenagers organize into social groups known within the community as gangs, not in the criminal sense, but as tightly bonded peer networks that form the entire social world of an Amish adolescent. These gangs self-regulate with real consequences. Conservative gangs impose formal punishments for smartphone use among their members. One Amish girl interviewed by Lancaster Online, who asked for her name not to be used, described the penalty within her conservative gang as a 3-week suspension from the group entirely. For a teenager whose whole social life exists within that circle, whose friendships, potential courtship, weekend gatherings, and sense of identity all flow through the group, 3 weeks of suspension functions as something close to complete social isolation. The punishment does not come from the church, it comes from peers. What parents actually know. Research into Amish family dynamics during Rumspringa consistently reveals something outsiders find genuinely surprising. Many Amish parents know considerably more than they appear to. The decision to look away, to not investigate the coat pocket or question the faint glow seen through the barn window at night, is frequently deliberate and calculated. Researchers who have studied Amish community psychology describe the parental approach as playing the long game. The reasoning is documented and consistent. Cracking down harder most often backfires completely. Teenagers pushed against a hard wall push back. Teenagers given room to explore, who are trusted to discover the value of what they were raised with, tend to return on their own terms and with genuine personal conviction. Between 85 and 90% of Amish teenagers who experience Rumspringa ultimately choose baptism and remain in the community for life. The parents who looked away were not negligent, they were calculating. When the bishop gets involved, church districts vary significantly in how leadership responds when smartphone use becomes visible enough to require a formal response. Some bishops address it through private conversation with the teenager and family, treating it pastorally rather than as a disciplinary case requiring public action. Others bring it before the congregation. A story from an Iowa Amish community has circulated among researchers as a precise illustration of the gap between institutional authority and reality. A bishop stood before his congregation delivering a sermon denouncing smartphone use, explaining that it placed the user outside compliance with the expectations of the church. The young woman he was addressing had a smartphone in her coat pocket at that exact moment. She did not interrupt, she did not confess, she listened. The line between what the church officially forbids and what actually exists within the community had already moved well past where the sermon was standing. The Instagram problem. Chuck Yancey, a psychology professor at Messiah University who has spent nearly a decade studying Amish youth culture, documented a finding that received little attention outside academic circles. Amish teenagers had tracked the same social media migration pattern as their English peers, abandoning Facebook as it aged, moving to Instagram, and eventually arriving on TikTok without any industry marketing directed at them and without any coordinated external effort to bring them online. The algorithm reached across the fence entirely on its own. Instagram is now the most popular social media platform among Amish young adults, according to Yancey. Twitter, which had seen limited usage among Amish teens in the mid-2010s, has since been largely abandoned, mirroring the broader population shift precisely. A community that held firm against every deliberate technology push for 3 centuries was moved by an algorithm designed purely to maximize engagement time. The decision point. Rumspringa does not end on a specific date or at a fixed age. It ends when the teenager makes a decision. The choice is binary and permanent in a way that almost no decision in modern American life ever truly is. Joining the church through baptism means accepting the ordnung as a binding covenant, not a preference or a guideline, but a lifelong commitment with documented social consequences for breaking it. Post-baptism smartphone use is no longer a youth group offense carrying a 3-week suspension. It becomes a formal church violation, subject to escalating discipline that begins with private pastoral counsel and ends, in serious cases, with shunning the complete social and economic severance from every person the individual has ever known. Those who choose baptism typically surrender or downgrade their devices. Some trade smartphones for basic flip phones, a compromise some progressive communities quietly accept. Others delete everything and step away entirely. Why 90% still come back? Here is the number researchers find most difficult to fully explain. Between 85 and 90% of Amish teenagers who pass through Rumspringa, who use smartphones, open Instagram accounts, discover TikTok, watch YouTube, and experience the full weight of what the modern internet offers, a young person choose to come back. They choose baptism. They choose the community. They choose the life they were raised inside after seeing the alternative with complete clarity and without restriction. No other religious community in the United States maintains a youth retention rate anywhere near that figure. The national average for religious retention among young adults sits well below 50% across most major denominations. The Amish, operating with no app, no algorithm, no gamification system, and no incentive program beyond the weight of belonging, hold 90%. Chuck Yancey described the internet as a power like nothing the Amish have previously faced in their entire history. He asked openly whether anyone, even the Amish, could truly shut the door on something this pervasive. But the number has not yet moved. The teenagers who hid phones in hay bales, who went viral on TikTok, who scrolled Instagram during Rumspringa and followed accounts from a world that has never heard of the ordnung, most of them handed the phone back when the decision arrived. Not because they were forced to, Because when they weighed what the screen offered against what the community meant, the community turned out to be heavier. That is the part no researcher has yet fully explained. The silent network. In places like Lancaster County and Holmes County, the smartphone is rarely a solo secret. It moves quietly from hand to hand, shared, protected, understood without being discussed. An Amish teen doesn't need a public profile to be connected. One device can serve 5 friends. A prepaid phone bought during Rumspringa becomes the center of a small digital circle. Usernames are memorized, not written down. Snapchat streaks are maintained in barns after dark. Instagram accounts are private, often under fake names. Profile pictures carefully chosen to avoid recognition. There are meeting points. A barn with a solar panel setup. A shed close enough to an English neighbor's Wi-Fi to catch 1 bar of signal. A job site where a construction foreman leaves the router on overnight. The connection is weak, but it's enough. What makes this network powerful isn't the technology, it's the silence. Parents often suspect, youth leaders sometimes know, but unless someone is publicly exposed, the system runs quietly beneath the surface. No announcements, no confrontations. Just an unspoken understanding that this phase will either burn out or lead somewhere permanent. Community rules were built to address visible rebellion. A car, a television, a haircut. Wi-Fi leaves no footprint in the mud. And that's what makes the silent network different. It doesn't challenge the ordnung loudly. It simply flows around it. The mental health question. Before smartphones, comparison inside Amish communities was local. A teen compared themselves to cousins, neighbors, or members of their own youth group. Standards were shared, expectations were clear. Identity was shaped within a small, tightly controlled world. The smartphone changes the scale of comparison overnight. Now, an Amish teenager scrolling Instagram isn't just seeing friends from Lancaster County or Holmes County. They're seeing influencers in Los Angeles, athletes in Miami, entrepreneurs in New York. Perfect lighting, perfect bodies, perfect lives. The gap between their plain clothing and a global fashion culture becomes visible in seconds. Researchers at Messiah University have noted that Amish youth today are navigating something previous generations never faced: identity formation under algorithmic pressure. Social media doesn't just show options. It ranks them. It rewards certain lifestyles with likes, followers, and attention. For a community built on humility and sameness, that kind of validation system is destabilizing. Some teens describe feeling caught between 2 timelines. During the day, they work on farms, wear traditional dress, and attend youth singings. At night, through a 6-inch screen, they watch people their age building personal brands, traveling freely, choosing careers without restriction. The question slowly forms: what am I giving up? It's not always open rebellion. Often, it's quiet anxiety. Former church leaders in states like Iowa have acknowledged that doubts now spread faster than ever. Before smartphones, questions circulated by conversation. Now they circulate by content. A single viral video can introduce ideas about independence, relationships, or lifestyle that would once have taken years to encounter. The Amish system has historically relied on slow change and strong social bonds to maintain stability. But smartphones compress exposure into months, sometimes weeks. The device doesn't just connect Amish teens to the outside world. It introduces a constant comparison, and comparison, more than technology itself, may be the deeper disruption. 300 years. That is how long the Amish have been making the same essential argument that community, simplicity, and deliberate separation from the world produce a life genuinely worth choosing. For 3 centuries, every new technology arrived with the same promise, that this one would finally break the fence. The printing press, the telephone, the automobile, the television, the desktop internet. Each was described by outsiders as a force Amish resistance could not survive. Each time, the fence held. The smartphone is different in ways that even sympathetic researchers now openly acknowledge. It is not a telephone that can be placed outside the home. It is not a television requiring a dedicated room. It is a complete portal to the entire modern world that weighs less than a deck of cards, charges in darkness, and disappears into a pocket between morning chores and evening prayers. Jansi stated it plainly, the internet is a power unlike anything the Amish have previously encountered, and yet the number still has not moved.